It all starts with a date, a simple line in a blog post that marks day one of a brand new adventure. It's that moment a founder looks at a scary blank page and decides to build a whole new world. Okay, let's get into this. So in this explainer, we're going to pull back the curtain on a game studio that's really trying to shake things up. They're called Frosty Dog Games, and their whole story is about building a company with a super clear, powerful purpose right from the very beginning. And that really is the big question, isn't it? It's the one at the very heart of this story. I mean, in an industry famous for its high-pressure, crunch culture, and sometimes pretty aggressive monetization, how does a brand new company build its entire business model around something as simple as fun? To really get what Frosty Dog is all about, you gotta start with the journey of its founder, Gavin. He's the one who took this massive leap from a super successful career to that scary blank page of starting something totally new. And Gavin's journey is just this perfect mix of experiences. First, he learned the real grit of being an entrepreneur by running his own business for 8 years. Then, he got a front row seat to how mega hits like Farm Heroes Saga are made at the gaming giant King. So he took that big league knowledge, mixed it with the indie creativity from his master's degree, and boom, he had the perfect toolkit to launch Frosty Dog. So you've got all this experience. What's your first move? Is it a product? A business plan? Nope. For Gavin, it was a simple guiding principle, a North Star that every single decision the company would ever make would point to. That's it, 3 words. But here's the thing. This isn't just some feel-good slogan they stick on a poster. It's a strategic choice. In a ridiculously crowded market, Frosty Dog decided their entire identity would be built on an absolute commitment to pure, simple fun. And they don't just leave it at that. They break this big vision down into 3 practical pillars. First, their games have to be accessible, which means anyone can pick them up and play. You don't need to be a hardcore gamer. Second, they have to be joyful, actually sparking happiness and laughter. And finally, the whole company has to be playful, which means actively pushing back against that stuffy corporate seriousness to keep the creative spark alive. This whole focus on a core idea leads us right to a framework you've probably heard of from Simon Sinek, the Golden Circle. Frosty Dog uses this to define not just what they do, but more importantly, why they do it. And here is the absolute key to everything. Their core belief, their why, is that fun is the entire point. It's not some feature you add in later, it's the very reason the company even exists. And that simple belief changes everything about how they operate. And this quote just sums it up perfectly. They honestly believe that the joy or, the lack of joy of the people making the game gets transferred directly to the player. It makes sense, right? A happy creative team is going to make a happy creative game. It's a direct line from their internal culture to the product you hold in your hands. All right, so if that's their why, let's talk about the how. This is where we see their philosophy turn into a set of principles they call the Frosty Dog Way. It's where the rubber meets the road, defining their day-to-day actions. And this is where you really see them zig, where the rest of the industry zags. On one side, you have the usual suspects, aggressive monetization, that brutal crunch culture. But on the other, the Frosty Dog Way is all about respectful monetization and a sustainable work pace. They are deliberately building their company in opposition to the norm. So let's get into the nitty-gritty. What are the actual rules they live by? Well, they're player first, and they have a strict no crunch policy, no corporate nonsense. But maybe the most radical rule is about money. Monetization has to enhance the fun, it can never block it. That means you can always finish their games without spending a dime, a principle that comes directly from actually listening to their players. So they've got their why and their how, but what about the what? I mean, how does a company built on playfulness handle boring stuff like strategic planning? Well, you guessed it, they turned that into a game too. So forget about dull quarterly targets. At Frosty Dog, they have quests. These are super focused, 90-day plans that cover everything from game development to marketing. Just using game terminology makes the actual work feel way more engaging and less like a corporate to-do list. And to make sure these quests actually work, they use that classic SMRT framework, but, and this is so cool, they add their own special twist. They add an E for emotional attachment to get the team personally invested in the goal, and an R for reward to make sure every single success gets celebrated. It's all about motivating with purpose and joy. And of course, these 90-day quests aren't just happening in a vacuum. They all ladder up to something way bigger, an adventure. These are the long-term goals, the 1, 3, or even 5-year vision for the company. and ensures every little task is part of a much larger, meaningful story. So, when you step back and look at the whole picture, the vision, the values, the way they plan their work, what you get is this incredibly powerful, cohesive identity. This isn't just a studio that makes games about play, it's a studio that is playful, right to its core. And really, this is what it all boils down to. For Frosty Dog Games, fun isn't a marketing buzzword or some feature on a box. It is the central pillar of their entire culture, their strategy, and their product. Everything they do is built on that one simple, powerful idea. Which leaves us with one last question to chew on. In an industry with thousands of competitors all fighting for attention, maybe the biggest advantage isn't a bigger budget or some new technology. Maybe it's having a clear, authentic, and soulful answer to the question, why do we even exist?